Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today we're discussing a model launched in 2015, and it really was the rebirth of the famed Pi Pan constellation. This is the Omega Constellation Globemaster, and it recalls the 1952 original, while the contemporary Griffin Claw Connie remains probably the worldwide bestseller and most recognizable modern constellation. The original Pi Pan, an observatory chronometer, lends much of its design essence and its spiritual soul to this Globemaster model. This is, in short, a constellation for Omega traditionalists. So the watch is 39 millimeters in diameter here in a combination of Sedna red gold and stainless steel. In profile, it's 12.9 millimeters thick, which makes it one of the thinnest Omega automatics in the current tri-level coaxial era. Lug-to-lug, the case measures 47 millimeters, and if you measure the outermost link on each side, the total rigid distance across the wrist is 52.1 with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Most of these seem to come on straps, so it's unusual to see it on a full bracelet. And if you look at it, frankly, this is about as close as you can get to integrated without actually being an Ingenieur or a Royal Oak or a Nautilus. And it's 100 meters water resistant too, so this is a legitimate sports watch. On my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see how it wears. I would say that if this were on a strap, it would wear well on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. On the bracelet, I think you're not going to want to go any smaller than 15. Again, my wrist is 16, and you can see how it fills out my wrist. Here's your down the barrel, here's your cuff shot, which confirms that it will fit underneath tight sleeves, and then here's your over the top shot. It's a weighty watch. It has a substantial and reassuring amount of heft to it. You can see after the conforming end link, we have a slight taper to the bracelet, which is Sedna red gold down the center and then steel on the profiled edges, which are beveled and polished and then satinated outboard. You can see we have removable links, and quite a few of them, fixed in place using screws, so you should be able to get the right size. Taking a look at the clasp, it's a double fold, twin trigger release. You have to press both sides to open it up so it won't pop open inadvertently. We have ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps so the tolerances won't degrade. The steel can't wear down the ceramic. The ceramic is much too hard. And then you can see it's a sequential close, this side before this side. Omega logo outboard, you can see the combination of steel and red gold. Quick note about Sedna gold. It's basically Omega's answer to Rolex's Everose, which is to say you've got a high percentage of copper to make it very red, and then you've got a high percentage, I believe in this case, of palladium to make it very resistant to fading. And so it is an enduringly bright red gold like Sedna. Sedna being that Omega answer to Rolex's Everose, Panerai's Oro Rosso, Hublot's King Gold. They're all very similar in being very bright red and then durably so. Taking a look at the case, it's almost a cushion case, to be honest. More of a cushion case than a round case. I would say the case seems to evoke 60s constellations more than the 50s Pi Pans, so it's got a little bit of both. Taking a look in profile, we have a bevel that runs from end to end. I actually applaud Omega for not giving us another lyre lugged case. We've got too many of those. This makes an original statement, which I appreciate. It does have a push-down crown, though it is 100 meters water resistant. We have a bezel with a sort of coining across its top. It's not the broader fluting of Rolex. It's more of a coining, almost like the case of a Breguet. And then we've got a cambered sapphire over all that, a combination of polish and satin, giving way to that Pi Pan-like faceted dial. Rose gold hands, indices, Omega logo, the marquee, and of course the star, reminding you that the original Connie was an observatory chronometer, and they remind you again on the case back, this one is a master chronometer. More on that in a moment. You can see that the faceting of the dial gives it a depth that's uncommon on modern Omega watches, and I love that Globemaster logo, which feels very vintage. Taking a look, you can see brightly loomed and no shortage of luminescence. The watch features a couple of subsidiary setting modes. Pull the crown out all the way, that's your stop seconds function, easy enough to understand. And then there's an intermediate position of the crown where you can now jump the hour hand independently. These 2 seconds and minutes are unaffected by this. So this is great if you're a traveler. You can jump the date forward and backwards. You can change hour by hour as you move across time zones. And if you've set your watch to the second, you're not going to lose those precious seconds. seconds. Taking a quick look, you can see that the disc itself is the same color as the dial. That's nicely done. And then out back, we've got a Omega caliber 8900, the observatory at the center, reminding us the original Connie was a observatory chronometer. This is a master chronometer. So let's just talk about what that is first. It means it's going to meet all the COSC standards, but COSC is a bare movement test. This is 6-position chronometric testing beyond COSC standards as a fully cased up and assembled and regulated watch. Other tests include winding efficiency, power reserve, water resistance, and tested anti-magnetism to over 1.5 Tesla beyond 15,000 Gauss. So it is a full battery evaluating the quality of the watch you wear, not some bare movement. So that is the master chronometer test. METAS, the Swiss Federal Institute of Metrology, helped create the standard with Omega, but it's not some sort of house standard like the Patek Philippe seal. Other companies can certify master chronometers, and in fact, Tudor has started doing that recently. It's an objective standard. The movement, twin barrels, in series for nice flat torque plateau from maximum wind to almost fully discharged, 60 hours of power reserve. The watch features a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance for shock resistance. Of course, practically amagnetic with an anti-magnetic silicon hairspring, anti-magnetic balance staff, an escapement, tri-level coaxial. The coaxial, a direct and indirect impulse escapement system created by British watchmaker George Daniels. Its advantage is sliding friction, which is less tangential friction, caught myself there. Tangential friction is less than the sliding friction of a standard Swiss lever. So if you can imagine things like draw and run to banking on a Swiss lever escapement, that takes up quite a bit of energy. Here we have tangential friction, which takes up less. That improves power reserve, reduces maintenance requirements, and improves the potential accuracy of the movement. The beat rate is 25,200 vibrations per hour, which I understand is largely determined by the use of the silicon hairspring. Lots to love here. All pivots on 39 joules. The movement is mechanically decorated, but attractively so. As you can see, a combination of arabesque Côte de Genève, blackened and polished screws. We've got bevels that are mechanically applied, but attractive to the eye. And some of the bridges and structures below the balance are engine turned, which is quite handsome. It's a very durable and accurate movement in a watch that is decidedly uncommon, as it seems most Omegas these days are either Seamasters or Speedmasters. This is neither. And it does take us back to those early 1950s constellations that had that pie pan-like faceted dial with the observatory chronometer certification. So if you are an old school Omega fan, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.